Good evening and welcome to the Standing Committee meeting of Monday, March the 6th, 2023. This meeting will now come to order, and I'll begin with the land acknowledgement. The Durham District School Board acknowledges that many Indigenous nations have long-standing relationships, both historic and modern, with the territories upon which our school board and our schools are located. Today, this area is home to many Indigenous peoples from across Turtle Island. We acknowledge that the Durham region forms a part of the traditional and treaty territory of the Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nation, the Mississauga peoples, and the treaty territory of the Chippewas of Georgina Island First Nation. It is on these ancestral and treaty lands that we teach, learn, and live. Are there any declarations of conflict of interest? Seeing none. Before we approve the agenda, I would just ask if there would be any objection to adding an information item this evening. It will be a presentation around the student trustee election, and it would be information item 8E. And I'm seeing no objection. So could I have a motion to approve the amended agenda? Thank you. Trustee Cunningham, seconded by Trustee Brown. We'll begin with item 5 on your agenda, the Durham District School Board presentations, and I'll call on Superintendent Stephen Nevels to present information around the Durham continuing education.
Good evening, and through your chair, it is a pleasure for me to bring forward information to Standing Committee tonight on the varied programs that we offer at Durham Continuing Education. The accompanying report can be found on page 1 of your package this evening. The report gives information on the various types of learners who benefit from the programs at DCE, the staffing complement at DCE, as well as information on enrollment, credit attainment, and recent media announcements. At this time, I would like to introduce Sarah McDonald, Principal of Durham Continuing Education, Jocelyn Dix and Christopher Barraclough, Vice Principals, and Sylvia D'Amato, the Supervisor of Non-Credit Programs, to present some general information and discuss the impact of our partnership and PSW programs for our students.
Thank you, Superintendent Nevels. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having us come this evening for this presentation. We have provided you with the board report, and I do believe it is in your agendas. And I'm going to start off our presentation tonight with the first slide. So at Durham Continuing Education, we know that there's many paths to success, and the students don't necessarily do it all in a straight line. We are proud to offer a variety of pathways for students to reach that success. And in that, we are doing it at several locations throughout the Durham region. Our main location is at 120 Center Street South in Oshawa. And in this location, this is where we house the majority of our programs that are servicing our adult community. It's counting down for another 1 minute and 12 seconds, just so you know. The 120 Center Street location is the beautiful old EA level building, and it is 3 floors of activity throughout the school day. We have another location at 1400 Bailey Street in Pickering, and at this location we are running our language programs. There are no credit programs running out of this location. It is strictly for the ESL and LINC community in the west end of the Durham region. And then to service our students in the north, we have 3 locations that are rover locations. We have a teacher that rotates between a site in Beaverton, a site at Uxbridge Secondary School, a site at, and a site at Port Perry High School. So that services our credit-bearing students in the north. On page 7 in your agenda package, I just want to point out that what makes Durham Continuing Education a unique school is that we are one of the only schools that has funding that comes from outside of the Ministry of Education. We have partnerships and funders at the both federal level and the provincial level. Our language instructions to newcomers to Canada are LINK programs, which also includes our enhanced language training programs and our CNC, which is our childcare for newcomers to Canada programs. They are funded by the Ministry of Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada, which is a federal funder. And then our English as a second language and our literacy basic skills are funded through our partnership with the provincial government, the Ministry of Labour, Immigration, Training, and Skills Development. And then, like every other composite high school, we are offering our credit programs that are funded through the Ministry of Education. The stats that we provided for you in the package were from our 2021-2022 school year. And this is just a highlight and a summary of what is also found on page 7 in your agenda package. And the summary for this comes from Appendix A, which is on page 10 of your agenda package. So I just pulled out some of the key data there for you. So all totaled, we serviced 10,740 students, either in a credit or a non-credit program. And of those that were credit-bearing, 10,857 credits were awarded to those students. So not all of those 10,000 students were credit students. A lot of them were non-credit students, but we did issue and award 10,857 credits in the 2021-2022 school year. We had 380 students in our Adult Day program doing pathways and schools. So these are students that didn't attain their high school diplomas when they were of high school age and have come back to receive those diplomas as a mature student over the age of 21. And of those 380, 515 credits were earned. The alternative education programs that we offer, Learn at Home, which we may know as correspondence programs, e-learning, which are online classes, night school and North Credit classes. We had 910 students earning 811 credits. Over the summer school program, which is by far our largest program, and is set to do that again this summer, we had 5,704 students enrolled in our summer school program, and they earned, and we granted 5,038 credits. So it was a very successful summer for us. Last summer was equally successful, and this summer is gearing up to be even larger. But the best part of being a Durham Continuing Education administrator is going to our graduation program, which Trustee Morton is nodding her head agreeing. Last year's graduation that was held in November was the first one we managed to have in person after the COVID pandemic restrictions were lifted. Prior to this, for the year of the 2021-2022 graduating class, there were 178 diplomas granted to students of all ages, all the way up to people that were there because they wanted their grandchildren to have a role model, right down to the new mums and new dads. So our graduation ceremony, if you have the chance, is a very special one to attend. So I'd like to turn it over now to Vice Principal Jocelyn Dix to continue on with the presentation.
Hi, good evening. What I want to do right now is just sort of highlight some of our partnership programs that we have at DCE. Without these partnerships, it would be hard to service all of the students that come in front of us, and we really value what they bring to the table and working with them on a regular basis. So here are a few of them. I thought I'd start with the ones that sort of impact our high school students, and that is our Boyd Archaeological Field Study Program and our YIP, which is our Youth in Policing, which is in partnership with Durham Region Police. So the Boyd Archaeology Program is in partnership with the Toronto and Region Conservation Authority. And this is a really exciting program. It runs in the summer, and it allows students to actually work on a live archaeological dig here in Durham. It's just north of Pickering, and the students get to work there, live there. They're in a community for a good chunk of the summer, and they get some valuable experience. I think a lot of the hands-on stuff is even more than many of the first-year university students who are studying archaeology get a chance to do. But along with that comes some other partnerships. They do dig into some Indigenous culture, Indigenous understanding. They work in partnership with our Indigenous community, so everyone is working together with the students of Indigenous, who identify as Indigenous and those who do not, and they're working together, and we bring everyone together in this learning environment. The Youth and Policing also it's leadership program, and our partnership with Durham Regional Police is highly valued. We run this program twice a year. We do it throughout the school year, where students are working on a co-op program. They meet on Wednesday nights and Saturdays. And then we also run it in the summer. It's the same program, but in the summer we're able to get into a little bit more depth because we've got a little bit more time. And it's really working on student leadership. They get a chance to look at career development. They get a chance to look at citizenship and their role in their communities. And so great experience for those who get involved. And it's a fair number of students. I think it's about 70 students at a time, and about 80% of them would be Durham District School Board students, and then others from the Durham Catholic School Board. At the top there, we've got our settlement worker, our CDCD program. This is a huge value to us and works with our newcomers to Canada. So a lot of our adults who are coming to us to learn English language, but it goes well beyond that. Our settlement workers will work with families and working on getting income, work on housing, work on clothing, all of the sort of the essential things that they need, but on top of that, the educational component. So we work very closely with them. We'll have settlement workers into the school every day of the week, many of them speaking a lot of different languages so that we can bridge that gap for students who may struggle with English and the understanding of what's going on. So it really is a huge piece for us and allows us to get some resources to the students. And then our adult learners, we've got our dual credit program and our partnership with Durham College. This goes a long way, one, to help our adult learners get their high school diploma, so finish up high school, but also have that connection to our community college. And we've got a great college right here in Durham, and students are taking college courses and high school courses. They get to meet, they have a college instructor as well as a teacher from our building that they're working side by side with and earning credits. And it gets them that that college experience that many of them never felt that they would possibly be able to attain. And they're in the colleges, they're going to school with college students, and they're attaining those credits. And some of them will go on to then post-secondary education. Our Ontario Works is a big part as well. We have someone from Ontario Works in our building that really helps our students. So some of our students will be on some social assistance, and they will be coming to school with the idea that they'll get their education, finish off their high school diploma, and then from there, many of them will go into our dual credit program, but then many of them will have the skills necessary to get out into the workforce. And that's a big goal for Ontario Works, is to provide that support so that these students can then go on to into the workforce and have a productive careers. And then finally on there is our co-op works. And for a lot of our students, coming to school can be very difficult. They hold full-time jobs, and they have to because they've got families at home that they need to support. So the co-op works program that we have works with employers all throughout Durham region, and we're able to provide credits for students while they go to work, earn money at the same time, and then they can be reaching towards their high school diploma. So that really goes a long way to help support them and their families at the same time working towards their diploma. There's a lot here, and I've only sort of skimmed over the surface of a lot of this. There's a lot of information on our website of these programs, and there's, a lot more partnerships that we're looking at obtaining as we work to help support our students. So feel free to dive into our website to take a look for these things, but this gives you a little bit of an idea of what's out there and what we're doing. I'm going to turn it over now to Chris Barraclough, who's going to talk to you about our PSW program, which is also very exciting.
Thank you very much, Jocelyn, and to continue through you, Madam Chairperson, I just wanted to highlight a program that we were able to launch a month ago, the start of February, which is our new PSW program at DCE. As you've heard from both Sarah and Jocelyn, the theme of DCE is to be a responsive educational center where we can create programming to meet the needs of our community and the learners that come to see us. As Sarah said, one of the most exciting things is to see some of those learners come back to us who have maybe had some previous challenges and have not been able to graduate. In our inaugural class for the PSW program, we have 30+ students, and it's special for me to see 3 students that I formerly had relationships with at other schools that have come back and that have joined this program as well. We also have a very quick growing waiting list, hopefully for future sessions of the PSW program. In partnership with the Ministry of Education, we're able to offer this program with the bursaries from them. This program is on par with, some might say, even slightly better than all the college programs that are offered across the province as well. Our students receive theoretical learning. They can receive, if in need, 7 credits for high school towards their high school diploma while they're in this program. They have their theoretical courses being taught by a registered nurse in our building. We also have the privilege of having a fully outfitted lab within our building, so students are practicing what they are learning in a lab setting that they might see in a variety of places where PSWs might find work. And at the conclusion of the program, the last 2 months, they will be doing placements in settings such as long-term care facilities or hospitals or retirement homes. So they get co-op credits as well. And when they leave the program at the end of June, all of these members will be fully qualified PSWs, and they will be able to enter the workplace immediately afterwards. And it's very, very exciting to see their enthusiasm, the enthusiasm of the instructor as they go through this, and hopefully it's just the beginning of several to go. And I'll turn it back over to Sarah.
Thank you. So as an alternative to education for our adult learners and a place to land for our newcomers to Canada, Durham Continuing Education, it continues to grow, continues to expand, and we are always looking for new ways to service the community. Thank you very much for allowing us to come and present this evening.
Thank you. Just wondering if trustees have any questions or comments for our presenters tonight? Trustee Morton?
Thank you, and through you, Chair. I just want to say that thank you, first of all, for being here and providing this kind of information, because I think your program is so amazing. I absolutely love to attend your graduation ceremony. As you said, this is a very moving ceremony because you've got people of all ages crossing the stage. You've got young mums with their babies. You've got retirees walking across the stage accepting their diploma. I just think that this is a very moving ceremony, and I thank you for your work.
Thank you for coming in. A lot of that was new to me, so I'm really glad that I had the chance to learn about your program and some of the wonderful things that you're doing. So thank you for the opportunity, and I hope to attend one of these graduation ceremonies. So I hope we'll get some communication when they're happening so that we can come out and support that, because that sounds really wonderful. Thank you.
I just wanted to echo that as well. I have driven by the Durham Continuing Education building many times, and I never knew what it was until right now. So I really appreciate your presentation. People have asked me, like, what is the Durham Continuing Education? Is it part of DDSB? And I'm like, to be honest, I don't know. So now I know, and I really appreciate that. And I will definitely be putting the second week of November in my calendar and hope to attend that graduation too. So thank you.
Thank you, and I also want to extend my thanks for you being here, but also for all the work you do. The PSW program is new to me. This is the first I'm hearing of it, which is so exciting because having only graduated a couple of years ago myself, I've had peers who have since returned to DCE. And I think it really just highlights the fact that even though you grow up with people and you think everyone's in the same environment, it's so important that we keep education and opportunities like this accessible. And I feel as though this really bridges the gap for people when life gives you all sorts of challenges and maybe your pathway isn't the same as everyone else's. It does renew a little bit of hope because there are some things we can't control, but certainly this is such an incredible education center, but also the fact that there's so many new programs coming, that is very exciting. It means that we're able to adapt in a way that traditional high school pathways may not be able to meet the needs of people in our communities. So thank you so much, and yes, I look forward to joining this graduation ceremony too. Thank you.
Yes, I would also like to echo my thank you, and I think this whole presentation exemplified what it really means to be a lifelong learner, and so any age, you're never stop learning. So I thank you for that. I did have a question about the personal support worker program, and my question is, I noticed that it is funded, it is no cost, so I wanted to know what the criteria was for enrollment to get into the program.
Sorry, I didn't realize it shut off. We did several information sessions and invited the community. We advertised it, social media, to anybody and everybody who was interested in attending. And in that, they received a thorough explanation of what was going to be expected from the program so that they knew if this is what they wanted to do, what they were going to get themselves into. And then there was an application and an interview. And then students were selected based on those process. If they were unsuccessful, they were asked if they wanted to be on the wait list to try again for the next session. Some elected to, some elected not to. And then the bursaries were, after they were accepted into the program, the applications went into the ministry for the bursaries on that.
Go ahead, Kelly. I'll. Okay. Well, to echo the sentiments then of the trustees, the board here, I'd like to thank Superintendent Nevels, you, Sarah McDonald, and your team for a very comprehensive and impressive presentation tonight. Durham Continuing Ed indeed meets the learning needs of a wide range of students of all ages and background. Thanks again. Moving on in the agenda then to item 6, and I'd like to call on our director, Camille Williams-Taylor, for the director's update.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. Good evening, and it's with great pleasure that I share with you an update this evening. As I continue to visit schools across the district, I'm inspired by the incredible work of staff and community partners, such as those who I visited last week at the Return Ticket SOAR program. The SOAR program stands for Supportive Opportunities to Achieve and Restore, and these programs are situated in Oshawa. These programs work to support and provide academic, behavioral, social, emotional supports to help young adult students, grades 7 through 12, to realize their talents and potential as they transition to regular day school or future opportunities. I really appreciated the work of the staff who was present to help me to understand the nature of the programming, and I even had the opportunity to meet with some students and hear their goals and how it is that they are planning their pathway to achieving their goals. Later this week, on Wednesday, March 8th at 7:30, Our Parent Involvement Committee is holding a parent engagement event with Dr. Pam Palmater, a Mi'kmaq lawyer, who will discuss the myths versus facts about Indigenous rights and what it means when we say that Indigenous rights are distinct. You can find out more and register on our website at ddsb.ca. Students enrolled currently in DDSB 4 level or grade 12 level French have until March the 8th to register for the DELF exam that will be taking place in April. Also this week, March 8th, is International Women's Day. The theme for 2023 is Every Woman Counts. It's a reminder that all women from all ages and walks of life have a place in every aspect of our society, both locally and globally. And finally, we're looking forward to the start of March break at the end of this week. This weekend, we will also see the clock spring forward. Both are optimistic indicators that spring is indeed on the way, despite what we saw this past weekend. For students and families, we at the DDSB hope that you will have a restful and safe break. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Director. We have no recommended actions this evening, so I'm moving on to item 8 on the agenda, information items. And I'll call on the student trustees for their report. Student trustees Ben Cameron, Lauren Edwards, and Gwen Hewitt.
Thank you, and through you, Chair, this is our March report. Recently, we've been preparing for the upcoming student trustee elections to decide the student trustees for the 2023 to 2024 term. This process will be virtual this year, as of right now, beginning with the first round of elections on March 7th and 8th, which is tomorrow and the next day, to decide on regional candidates. These candidates will then run against each other in April to decide the next student trustees. I'm going to pass it off to Trustee Cameron to speak on OSTA and high school visits.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. I will be one of those candidates tomorrow. I hope to be back for another term, and we'll certainly update everyone on how that goes. From February 16th to the 19th, I attended OSTA ACO's, which is the Ontario Student Trustee Association, Board Council Conference in Ottawa, where I and a bunch of other amazing student trustees from across the province came together to learn and discuss issues of importance to students. We had a couple presentations, including a joint one between OPC, the Ontario Principals Council, and their Catholic counterpart, the CPCO. It was a fabulous weekend. I've also been visiting schools in Pickering and Ajax, including J. Clark, Ajax High, and Pine Ridge, to listen to students' concerns and priorities and talk about plans moving forward. It's been a pleasure to connect with students, and I'm so happy with how these conversations have gone and look forward to having more in the future. Our students are so thoughtful and so creative and so smart and so innovative, and they really do inspire me to be better every single day. I'll pass it off to Trustee Edwards.
Thank you. So in the Student Senate, we've been focusing on 2 major upcoming events, a mental health week filled with initiatives and activities for students to learn more about well-being during Children's Mental Health Week, which takes place from May 1st to May 5th. The Student Senate's other event regards an elementary leadership conference, which invites intermediate students from grades 7 to 8 to an opportunity to learn about what leadership means and how they can carry positive characteristics out in their secondary school experience. Logistics and details are to be determined for each of these events, but this has been the main focus of our Senate as of recently. Our next Senate meeting will be Monday, March 20th. Also, on March 1st, the 3 of us were fortunate to meet with Director Williams-Taylor to discuss priorities and shared visions for the students' experience within DDSB. We had a productive and thought-provoking meeting that touched on Senate, Indigenous education, student voice, and more. Thank you, Chair. This is all we have to report tonight. We're happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments for the student trustees tonight? And I'm seeing none. Item 8B, I'll call on Associate Director David Wright for the cyber incident report.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Good evening, everyone. Really happy to be able to provide this concluding report to you on the cyber incident that took place on November 25th, 2022. Early in the morning on the 25th of November, staff were made aware of suspicious activity on the network and worked quickly to take it offline. Though no one was immediately aware of the cause, after working through some troubleshooting, it became clear that there had been a network breach, and many of our servers and files had been encrypted. We were working very closely with our insurer, OSB, the Ontario School Board Insurance Exchange, over the last number of months, as well as the consultants recommended to us by OSB, our insurers. In addition to being in contact with our insurer, we were in close contact with the Ontario Privacy Commissioner, the Ontario Provincial Police, the Ministry of Education, and additionally, we did share information, all the information we were able to share with our staff and school communities at the times we were able to do so. We have worked through a very technical process to contain and remediate the damage done to our network, while concurrently undergoing a forensic investigation to determine what data, if any, may have been taken. Our forensic investigators have determined that there is no evidence that personal staff or student information was accessed or exfiltrated from our network before it was taken down. This is, of course, the best case result and the information through the forensic investigation that we were hoping for. We have since significantly hardened our network environment, and we will be working over the coming months to continue to make further improvements. That is my report, Madam Chair. Happy to answer any questions through you.
Thank you, Associate Director. Are there any questions? Calling on Student Trustee Ben Cameron.
Thank you very much, Chair. I can't say I'm particularly surprised by this. I just, one line stuck out to me. It says, a ransom demand was neither made nor was any ransom paid. The question is, would we pay ransom?
So I guess depending on the situation, that line was included because it was initially thought that this was a ransomware attack. There are a number of school boards and another number of public sector entities over the last number of months that you'll have noticed in the media have been attacked and have had ransom demands. So we would work closely with our insurer. If it came down to it, I'm sure that we would certainly discuss paying a ransom, depending on the risk that was determined. So we'd work as a senior team, we'd work with our insurer and make that determination. So luckily we did not in this case, and certainly not a great situation, but the best case scenario in the end.
Seeing no further questions or comments, move on with the item C on the agenda. Back to Associate Director David Wright for the quarterly construction and major projects progress report.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you, it's my pleasure to welcome and introduce Lindsay Wells, who is Manager of Facility Design and Construction, who is here this evening to present the report.
Thank you, and through you, Chair Edwards. I'm happy to be here this evening to provide an update on the status of the new construction and major projects. This is the second quarterly report for the year. Another one will come in June, and then again in September. This report really serves as an update to the previously presented one in January of this year. We are progressing with our 5 major school builds. They are in various stages of development. I'm very pleased to report that the Beaverton Thora Public School Rebuild Project has hit a number of milestones in the last few months. The ministry announcement took place on February 7th, and we have proceeded to construction. Site plan negotiations were successful, and the site plan agreement has been finalized with the township. Additionally, we have received the building permit. The unnamed Pickering Creekwood Public School continues to progress through design with various site investigations underway. We continue to work closely with the City of Pickering and progress towards site plan agreement and site acquisition, including severance and finalizing rezoning. The Mary Street Public School Building Addition was released for construction tender and closed late last week. Submissions are currently under review while we continue to work with the City of Oshawa towards site plan approval and building permit issuance. Pending approvals, we hope to have construction underway this spring. Construction on the unnamed North Oshawa Public School is ready to start and will commence with site grading and foundations once the weather breaks, which will hopefully be in the next few weeks. The unnamed North Oshawa Secondary School is continuing to move through design with the architects, as well as the development process with the City of Oshawa. Initial discussions have taken place regarding site plan approval, and we are currently working to get the various site investigations underway. Similarly, the unnamed Pickering Seton Public School is also working through design and site development stages. Overall, we're making great progress with the new builds. The 6 childcare projects are also moving through their various stages of development, with one recently having been completed with occupancy granted, and 2 released for construction tender. These projects range from interior renovations with small or minor additions to full 3-room childcare building additions. Our major projects team continues to be very busy with many projects at various stages. Much of the work is currently out to tender in preparation for construction to get underway in the spring and summer. There's a wide range of projects including office, classroom, and learning commons renovations, washroom fixture and finish refreshes, exterior projects including asphalt and roof replacements, as well as several masonry and wall cladding restoration projects. Emphasis continues to be placed on ventilation improvements throughout the schools, and this initiative is ongoing with several projects in various stages of completion. Overall, many projects on the go, both with new construction and major projects. And this concludes my report, and I welcome any questions you may have.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments? And I'm seeing none. So moving on to item D on the agenda, I'm going to call on Trustee Cunningham for the OPSPA report.
Thank you, Chair Thatcher. I am going to turn this one over to Trustee Edwards to deliver this report. Thank you.
Thank you. The Ontario Public School Board Association met on February 24th and 25th. It was actually had 2 presentations that were provided to the Board of OPSPA. One was an overview of the Toronto District School Board Centre of Excellence for Black Students Achievement for Systems from Systems Superintendent Equity and Anti-Oppression in Early Years, Karen Murray. The other was a presentation from the OPSPA's Associate Director of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion, Ken Jeffers, who provided training on the background and terminology stemming from questions connected to recent school board equity and human rights related issues, misinformation, and controversy. We discussed labor issues, a legislative update. It was just noted that the government is currently focusing on changing the provincial healthcare systems through legislation, so not a lot of legislation updates around the education sector at this point in time. They also mentioned the submission that was sent in around the education funding consultation guide that the ministry released, and we are hoping that the grants for student needs will follow hopefully the provincial budget tabling on March 23rd. And they reviewed the OPSPA Advocacy Day, which Trustee Cunningham and Oldfield had approached and gave a previous presentation on. And I would say that there was also a presentation from the Ontario Education Service Corporation, basically an update on their recent initiatives undertaken by Ontario Education Service Corporation, and sort of an overview of their services that they provide around governance and leadership, data mobilization, energy, leadership, strategic leadership, and equity inclusion planning that they do, including things like a multi-strategic plan. And then there was a review of what the programs and education policy committees were up to. A reminder of the strategic plan survey that went out to all trustees as they are embarking on their creating their new strategic plan. There will be a brainstorming exercises about the strategic plan that will be happening during the regional meeting, which is, I think, is April the 1st, I believe, the Saturday. And that is my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Edwards. Are there any questions or comments? And I'm seeing none. So moving on to the last item on this section, and I'm going to call on Trustee Carolyn Morton to provide information around the student trustee elections.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. I think that it is very important for everyone to have a good understanding of the process whereby our 3 student trustees are elected to their role. This is a timely matter as the first stage in this process is occurring this week in our secondary schools in Oshawa, Whitby, Ajax, and Pickering. The second stage is scheduled to take place the 3rd week of April in all areas of the board. In March of 2020, we received the news that our schooling would look very different and alternate plans would need to be made. I'm extremely thankful that our staff was innovative and we quickly moved this election process to online. The student trustee election process has taken place virtually since the spring of 2020, 3 years ago. A few weeks ago, we were informed that this election process, both stages 1 and 2, would be again virtual this year. I've attended all student trustee elections for the North, both in person and virtual, since becoming a trustee in 2010, as I think that it is an extremely important process. We all know how important the role of student trustee is because the voice of the youth is key. There are many different methods used throughout the province of Ontario in determining how student trustees are elected, and I trust that Lauren, Ben, and Gwen are having discussions at Student Senate as to how the Durham District School Board should move forward. I can well understand why the decision has been made to hold stage 1 of the election process virtually, but I'm curious to know if any consideration was given to the possibility of moving to live, in-person, or perhaps a hybrid model for the second stage. Our students learn much by actually seeing, hearing, and interacting with the potential candidates. Reading facial expression, reading body language is a key communication skill. Social interaction and networking are important. I consider this to be a valuable learning and growing experience. These students are choosing the best candidate to represent them at our board table. Our students, both elementary and secondary, are now meeting on board-wide basis in athletic competitions, band, and choir events. 10 days ago, we had a culinary skills competition with many secondary schools involved. We've had a student leadership day right here at the Ed Center, where secondary school students gathered not only from the DDSB, but from many other boards as well. And the list goes on. Could this be a consideration for stage 2 of the student trustee election process, which takes place in April? I realize that there are logistical concerns around busing our students and our staff, staff shortages, but I need to make my concerns known to all. I'm also eager to understand how these decisions are made. Is student voice at the center of this discussion? Hence, I'm seeking greater understanding, and I want to make sure that we are moving forward in the best possible way. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Morton. I'll call on Director Camille Williams-Taylor to respond.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Certainly, we do recognize that in-person opportunities are the priority for many of our engagements. We do recognize that, to your point, Trustee Morton, that when it is that we do have engagements of this kind, personal connections are very helpful and informative. I would suggest that, unfortunately, due to, as you've said, logistical reasons, switching to a different format only weeks from now for the entire district will be somewhat problematic. But I do know, and I know that Student Trustee Edwards made comment that we had a very robust meeting on March 1st, myself with the 3 student trustees, and I do recognize here that the 3 trustees have brought forward not only concerns, ideas, thoughts about the way forward for election, but indeed for how it is that the district engages Student Senate as well as student trustees as a whole. So what I think that you will find, trustee and all trustees, is that as we go into the planning for next year, you will see that some of those feedback pieces will come forward. Indeed, some of them do represent a governance question in terms of how the Student Senate is structured and where it is that we may have opportunity for improvement. I also would alert trustees to the fact that we are going into a strategic planning experience, and trustees will bring their voices to how it is that we continue to engage student voice, not only for student trustees and student senate, but beyond that in a structural point of view.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments? Trustee Pinello.
Thank you, Chair. Through you. I guess my questions are twofold. One, I just want clarification perhaps from the student trustees in terms of conversations that were had around preferred formats or other considerations about the process. Having never really interacted with the Student Senate as a student, I don't know how those conversations typically go, but there might be things that they have based on their experiences to get here that would help fill in the blanks for me. And then my second question, perhaps to us, would be, have we made any accommodations or considerations to help especially those students who may have put their name forward to connect in person, even if it's not viable to change phase 2? I do think it's important that they can at least find, I don't want to say camaraderie, but community with each other and understanding the process. This might be their first time running. Knowing that we all had to door knock just a couple months ago to be here, I think it's important that if we can't change the entire system, that we maybe give consideration to how we can at least help bring them together so they are surrounded by some crucial support and information before this big process. Thank you.
Yeah, just to answer your question, Trustee Pinello. We're kind of in the same boat as Trustee Morton. We're not really sure who makes the decisions, but the 3 of us did try to advocate for in-person student trustee elections in the upcoming, in the upcoming week when the elections are taking place. As we do agree with many of the things that Trustee Morton said, in-person elections are certainly more effective. And that is something that we would be interested in seeing. Other school boards are doing it, and we would like to do it as well. So if there's some sort of plan we could make in terms of who we could talk to kind of change this, then that would be pretty great.
Thank you. Trustee Morton.
Thank you, and through you, I just want to say thank you to our director and our staff for that consideration and thinking about moving forward. And I realize that there are limitations this year, but if we can keep in mind next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Morton. Any additional comments or questions? Trustee Pinello.
Thank you, Chair. Me again. I realize that my one question, thank you to the student trustees for answering the first half, but for the second half, are there were there maybe considerations put forward or considered to help support those candidates for this year, even though it's going to be virtual, and bring them together? And if not, is that something that maybe could be considered? Thanks.
Can I call on, I've got student trustee Ben Cameron. Go ahead, Ben.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not aware of anything like that happening.
Thank you. I'm wondering if Superintendent Georgette Davis would have anything to add?
Yes, thank you, and through you, Chair. So we have had discussions around what that could look and sound like, and also it does involve many schools with teacher advisors that support this process as well. So what the student trustees didn't tell you was that there were some conversations with the Senates, and as we have conversations about virtual and in-person, there's always some who want it virtual, some who want it in person, so we have to look at all of those pieces together and make that determination. So that's something that we can look at. It does involve in-person pieces, which is, at this time, we have to consider the pieces that we talked about in terms of transportation and those things, but I'm happy to have a conversation with the student trustees and see what we can come up with.
Thank you. And I'm seeing no further questions or comments. Item 9 then, correspondence. We have no correspondence in this package, so I'm looking for a mover and a seconder to adjourn this meeting. Trustee Arsenault and Trustee Pinello. This meeting is now adjourned.
Good evening. We are here to start our special board meeting of Monday, March 6th, 2023. This meeting is called to order. In the spirit of truth and reconciliation, I would like to proceed with the land acknowledgement. The Durham District School Board acknowledges that many Indigenous nations have long-standing relationships, both historic and modern, with the territories upon which our school board and schools are located. Today, this area is home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island. We acknowledge that the Durham region forms a part of the traditional and treaty territories of Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nation, the Mississaugas peoples, and the treaty territory of the Chippewas of Georgina Island First Nations. It is on these ancestral treaty lands that we teach, learn, and live. Are there any declarations of interest? Seeing none, I'm looking at the adoption of the agenda as provided. I have a motion to approve the agenda. Trustee Miller, Trustee Morton, all those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Moving on to item recommended actions, I will move it to Trustee Emma Cunningham to do a report on resolutions coming from the Committee of the Whole and Camera standing.
Thank you. I move that the board now adopt the resolution and approve the actions of the March 6, 2023 Committee of the Whole in-camera standing committee meeting.
Thank you. The first, that's the motion on the floor. A seconder, please. Trustee Thatcher. Anybody opposed? Seeing none, that motion is carried. Thank you. We're now on to item basic B, is the consideration of submission of read the code of conduct. At a special board meeting held on February 6, 2023, the Board of Trustees considered the Integrity Commissioner's report as a result of their investigation regarding breaches of the Code of Conduct by Trustee Linda Stone. 6 breaches were founded by the board at that meeting, and sanctions were imposed. Trustee Stone was provided with written notice of the determination of breaches and imposed sanctions. As per the Education Act, Trustee Stone was given at least 14 days to provide a written submission to the Board of Trustees for consideration. The Board of Trustees have received the written submission in the required timeline, and it was provided in your package. The board now must consider Trustee Stone's written submission, and again, as per the Education Act, make a determination to confirm or revoke the determination of breaches made at the February 6, 2023 special board meeting. The board also must review the sanctions imposed. If the board revokes the determination of breach, and any sanction imposed by the board is revoked. If the board confirms the determination of breach, the board must still review the decisions on imposed sanctions and confirm, vary, or revoke its decision on sanctions. I will actually pass this over to legal counsel Dolores Barbini.
Thank you, Chair Edwards. Just to confirm again the process, I will repeat what Chair Edwards has said, that you must now as a board consider the written submissions from Trustee Stone and confirm or revoke the determinations of breaches made on February 6, 2023. In terms of demonstrating good faith consideration, these discussions should obviously be discussed in public. And subject to any questions, those were just the comments I would make at the outset.
Thank you. Is there any questions as far as process is concerned? Trustee Oldfield.
Yeah, through you, Chair. Are we going through each individual breach and decision that we made that evening, or is this something that could be done as a, I don't want to say package, but like in one decision? Like if we were to say, that we're either upholding or revoking one or all of them? Is that a possibility in terms of process, or do we have to go through each one as we did on the 6th of February?
It's my understanding that it's up to the decision of the board, that we can actually say, making sure that we explicitly say that there are, that we either revoke or confirm all 6 motions that were presented basically at that meeting, or you can do them individually. It's up to the decision of the board.
Okay, thank you.
Agreed.
Trustee Cunningham.
Can I make the suggestion then that we do it in order of the comments by Trustee Stone and go through them one by one and make decisions based on our responses to them?
I'm not sure I actually follow the instructions, because I'm not sure the comments follow the actual decisions per se in that order. If you want, you're talking about actually discussing the points that was in the submission. That's what you're talking about. Okay, sorry, my misunderstanding. That's great. We can use that as a process to discuss the submission from Trustee Stone based on the order of points that were provided in the submission. Is that okay for process if we had any comments? Trustee Oldfield.
Just so I'm clear, we would be having then the conversation around the submission, and then following that, we would then revisit our decision, and then do what we choose to do at that point.
That's correct. Okay. So the discussion will be around the submission based on the points that are provided in the submission, and then we will go on to making our final determination, and if and such sanctions.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, considering that, we are starting off on page 1 of your package that was provided on the submission on item number 1. Is there any comments at that particular time? Trustee Cunningham.
My understanding on point 1, and Councilor Barbini can correct me, is that every single comment made was decided to reach the code of conduct rather than just some of them. I believe that the reason it was so broad is that all of them were found to have reached the code. So I would like to ask for a clarification on whether I understood that correctly.
Okay, thank you through Chair Edwards. I think if you look at the report, in some instances there are specific comments set out to explain the breaches. I mean, it's a fairly lengthy report, but the Integrity Commissioner does set out the specific comments. Sometimes they're quite long, but he does align the comments with the breaches of the code.
Sorry, just to clarify, I meant within, when the report provided examples of tweets or comments made in meetings for each thing, everything in that section was determined to have been a breach.
Yes, although you'd have to go back to the report. He doesn't necessarily always do that.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other further questions on section 1 at this point in time? Seeing none. Any questions around section 2? Any questions on section 2 in the package? Trustee Miller.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I just wanted to clarify, we're not giving commentary, we're just asking questions for section 2.
We're asking questions around, any questions you have around this written submission about the process or comments around the Integrity Commission report that is related to those comments.
I'm not sure, because I have a commentary, because I wanted to clarify where we stood in terms of, in the section 2, it is noted as, I read, Mr. Drury did not have the right to investigate the breaches of the obsolete code, and I would like, if you could clarify where we stood when we continued our, as a group, we decided to continue the investigation.
Thank you, Trustee Miller. In one of the issues that by the confirmation that Trustee Cunningham had said is that we can confirm that in fact that a resolution was made on December 5th authorizing the investigation. Trustee Penelo.
Chair, I was just going to, and I think you might have just answered it, but ask for clarification on part 2, because it was my understanding that when we passed the motion to appoint a new integrity commissioner to investigate, that was authorization granted on behalf of the board?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions on 2? Going to section 3, any questions? Seeing none, how about section 4? Oh, sorry, Trustee Miller, and I didn't see, and then Trustee Cunningham. Oops. Somehow they got switched.
I'm not sure, again, I think it's important to clarify again, as I was not in the previous board term, but there were decisions made, and I think it should be stated publicly, where we were at in terms of continuing the investigation. It says in section 3 that the board voted to end the investigation, and that is not my understanding, and I would like some clarification on statement 3.
Council Cotter.
Thank you, and through you, Chair Edwards, I think there's no doubt that as a result of Trustee Stone's resignations that those active investigations were terminated. And then the Trustee Edwards did make reference to the fact that on December 5th there was a resolution passed directing the IC to proceed with those investigations.
Okay, Trustee Cunningham.
I pressed the button when you said 4. Can I ask in regards to 4?
So, any questions on 3, and then I'll go to 4, I think. Okay, 4, Trustee Cunningham.
I'd like a point of clarification on 4. I'm unclear if the feedback from Trustee Stone is saying that the existing code was being applied to older pieces of content that predated the existing code, or if new pieces of content were being held up against the current code. Can you confirm whether all pieces of content were held up against the code that would have been in effect at the time that piece of content went out, whether it was on Twitter or comments in a meeting?
Can I go to Council Barbini? And my understanding in reading the report, as far as that was concerned, although there were in different sections of the old code, that basically the determination in the report was that they were still covered, but maybe different sections, but they were still covered in the Integrity Commissioner's report, so they were still considered a breach.
Yes, that's correct, Chair Edwards, through you. Firstly, the Integrity Commissioner is very careful to ensure that he is applying the code that would have been applicable at the time the action occurred. And I think that is critical. That is what ought to have been done. And he does described that that's what he's doing in the report. So it depends on the date when the action, and depending on that date, he applies the applicable code, whether it's the new one or the previous one. I hope that answers your question.
And that seems to have answered Trustee Cunningham's question. Any other questions on 4? Seeing none on 4, section 5. Trustee Pinello.
Thank you, Chair. I do want to clarify for this purpose, for point 5, that an individual does not have to be a member of the board to make a report with the Integrity Commissioner. I think that's important that we clarify that, seeing as it's shared publicly as a resource for the community. So if we could just clarify that you do not have to be a member or a trustee of the board in order to, file a complaint and have due process followed by the Integrity Commissioner.
That is correct, and I think I haven't got the code right in front of me. I should have had it. Do you have it, Councillor Cotter, to actually read that, please?
Well, I can just, through you, Chair Edwards, I think I can provide a summary off the top of my head without taking the board to the sections, but I can do that if required. But I think Section 218.3 of the Education Act provides that the board may adopt a code of conduct, and also provides that members may bring breaches of the code of conduct directly to the Board of Trustees. So our code of conduct preserves that right. So a member can bring a complaint directly to the board, and that's a statutory right, and our code preserves that. Our code also provides that a member of the board may elect to file a complaint with the Integrity Commissioner, and also provides that same right to members of staff and members of the public. So our code does preserve the Section 218.3 of the Education Act in terms of a member's right to bring a complaint directly to the board, but also provides a right of the public and trustees to file a complaint with the Integrity Commissioner.
Thank you. Okay, so no other comments on Section 5. We're going to move on to Section 6. Questions around Section 6? Trustee Cunningham.
One of my understandings in the Code of Conduct is that members of the board are obligated to uphold decisions made by the board. Even if we disagree with them, we're able to specify that we disagree with them, but ultimately uphold them. So I don't have the policies directly in front of me, but because we have previous iterations of the board have passed policies relating to transgender rights in the board, my understanding is that as the current board, we are obligated to uphold them.
That is correct, Trustee Cunningham. No other further comments around Section 6, so we move on to Section 7. Any questions or comments around Section 7? Student Trustee Ben Student Trustee Ben Cameron.
Thank you, Chair. I just, in section, this is Section 6, right? Oh, Section 7. Oh, okay. I was going to talk about Section 6. Is that all right?
Go ahead, it's Section 6. You can go ahead.
There's some language in the section that Trustee Sohn uses, as well as in Section 9, around ideological conformity, and I just wanted to emphasize that this decision is about upholding our obligations as a board for trans rights, human rights, LGBTQ rights. It's not about free speech. It's not about any of that. Because I remember in the report from the Integrity Commissioner, it talked about how boards have that obligation to show the public that we support LGBTQ rights and everyone's rights, no matter what. So.
Yes, school boards are required to hold up the human rights code and everything under our human rights and anti-racism policy, current policy as well. Okay, section 7. Trustee Pinello.
Thank you, Chair. Just a remark for, I guess, section 6 and 7 combined that, again, specific language, free speech not actually being within the charter, it being freedom of expression, I think is very important here. And the comment about the weaponizing of the code of conduct to shut down, debate and discussion, I also think is contrary to the complaints which were based in human rights. And as mentioned before me, in terms of we as a board have decided previously that we will uphold human rights, protect them, policies have been debated, we have a responsibility, and that we are free to debate people, but that code of conduct reiterates that we have to do so at a standard that is of a higher level of professionalism because of the position and the privilege that we're granted in being in this space, and that we can debate ideas and solutions, but debating identities and the rights of people within this board and this institution and space is not fair game.
Thank you, Trustee Pinello. I might want to ask Councillor Barbini about and I hope I'm not putting you in the spot, but it's basically around free speech, and as comments that have been recently made by another school board as well about what free speech isn't and what is covered under the Human Rights Code.
Thank you, Chair Edwards. So I have had occasion to review a very recent decision that is similar to this case from the Divisional Court for the Toronto Catholic District School Board and Trustee Del Grande. It was released in January of this year. And the Divisional Court addresses the issue of the application of the Charter to these kinds of issues. And the test applied by the court in that case was that decision makers like yourselves must balance charter values with the statutory objectives of the Education Act. And if I may for a moment, the court recognized that the statutory objective of a school board and trustees in very similar circumstances is as follows, and I'll just quote from the decision. The board has a statutory obligation to promote student well-being in a positive and inclusive school climate. The board also has an obligation to enforce a minimum standard of conduct expected of its trustees. All trustees have an obligation to comply with the code of conduct and to assist the board in fulfilling its duties. Sanctioning the applicant, who was the trustee in that case, for making disrespectful comments was not contrary to the Education Act, but consistent with the Act's statutory objective. The court then said that the charter values that are claimed to be at stake must be balanced against those statutory objectives. So it is a balancing exercise. And I would say the difficulty here is that you have limited, if any, submissions from Trustee Stone about how she feels her charter freedom of expression has been violated. And just finally, the court did say in the Del Grande case that the onus is on the trustee to demonstrate the very high bar that charter rights have been violated. And ultimately what the court said is that the court will consider the reasonableness of the board's decision in balancing its statutory objectives, as I just described, against the charter values that are claimed to have been breached. And just, one final point. The charter does not generally protect breaches of the Human Rights Code. And so to the extent that it has been found that there's a breach of the Human Rights Code, that would not likely be protected under the Charter.
Thank you, Councilor Barbini. Any student trustee, Ben Cameron?
Thank you, Chair. I would just like to add a little bit to that about free speech and like our decision today and at the previous board meeting deciding this. Nothing that we have decided has stopped Trustee Stone from saying what she wants to say.
Okay, could we just continue looking at what the submission is? And I understand as far as what we're currently looking at is the conduct that was at this point in time, and contain our comments to there as far as your first part was there, but contain our comments directly to the sections that we've been talking about, and not what future or comments are being made at this point in time. Okay. Trustee Miller. Trustee Miller.
Are we still sorry? Thank you, Chair. Are we still discussing item 7?
It was 6 and 7 that they were kind of joined together at this point in time.
Okay, I'll just make a brief commentary. After listening to council and some of the responses so far, I think what I feel relating to 6 and 7 in terms of free speech, I think for me, understanding the impact in terms of human rights code is when we're looking at the board, speaking as a whole, and our duties, as was mentioned, our responsibilities and our obligation to respect the human rights code. I think the issue I have is about rounding the impact. We all don't have to agree on different various things, but when we look at impact, it's not about whether we intended to harm or we have a particular type of view. It is about the harm caused when we express certain views, and it's been stated and evidence that it has caused harm. So that part of, to me, is not the debate. It's that it's because it has caused harm. And so I think also the other issue with the free speech is that in cases where we're not careful for each person here, it can lead to hate speech, and it definitely has an impact to vulnerable communities. And I think that's a really key concern and issue, and I think that's what's at the table is the harm that has been caused.
Thank you, Trustee Miller. Trustee Oldfield.
Yeah, I wanted to just maybe pick up on what Trustee Cameron was saying. It might be unfortunate that we didn't let him maybe finish that train of thought, and not that I'm reading your mind, Trustee Cameron, but I think the point is that there hasn't been a limit on free speech because it continues. And so it's not about what is actually being said, but the fact that it is continuing. So there hasn't been an infringement on free speech because it has carried on. So I mean, you're nodding at me, so I'm thinking that that's where you were going with that. But thanks.
Okay, thank you for that clarification, Trustee Oldfield. Trustee Cunningham.
One other thing that I think I picked up from that is that freedom of expression does not necessarily mean freedom from consequences. And so that's another thing that I thought Student Trustee Cameron was alluding to, is that you can say things, but that doesn't necessarily mean that there aren't consequences for saying them.
Thank you, Trustee Cunningham. Any further comments on 6 or 7? I think we were doing those together at this point in time. Then we're moving on to Section 8. Any questions on Section 8? Seeing none, I'm going to then move on to Section 9. Trustee Pinello, Trustee Cunningham first, and then Trustee Pinello.
Sorry, I'm aware that I'm speaking quite a bit tonight. I think that it is not a personal attack to uphold the Human Rights Code. I just don't think upholding the Human Rights Code should be considered a personal attack.
Thank you, Trustee Cunningham. Trustee Pinello.
Thank you, Chair. I think I'll just combine 8 and 9 together again, since we kind of got on the habit of doing that. I think, want to clarify in Part 8, where it was cited, trustees shall ensure that their comments are issue-based and not personal, demeaning, or disparaging with regard to any person, including board staff or fellow board members. That when we are, you don't necessarily have to target harm towards one particular person for it to harm an entire group. And because there are protected grounds for groups of people with intersecting identities within the Human Rights Code, I think that's a very important clarification to make. They don't necessarily need to be personal and directed at one individual to still be considered harmful. And debating identities is not an issue-based conversation, it's identity-based. And then for 9, I think I take issue with comments about impartiality, because I do think as a board, we made decisions to go above and beyond typically the usual process, to have an additional integrity commissioner appointed, and to give everyone an opportunity for a fair shake, so to speak. A process which allowed a clean set of eyes and a clean, approach, along with a new board, to take a look and to consider what that investigation brought forward to the board, discussion and due diligence was had, and to, wash it down to something of political orthodoxy, I think does a huge disservice to each and every individual member of this board, but also us as a collective, because we are a collection of very diverse individuals with different, I'm sure, political affiliations and experiences and life experiences, who come to this space and look at things and have to measure harm in areas where we are not necessarily experts, but we learn and we do our best to unlearn, perhaps, things that are harmful or problematic, or that we just didn't have the opportunity to be exposed to. So I think that's really important, that we clarify that it was quite an impartial process that we allowed to happen, that went above and beyond what the previous board had done at the time prior to the resignation. And I don't think that human rights is necessarily political, and so to politicize such a thing is highly problematic, and I think contrary to why we're supposed to be here. So, thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Pinello. So any further comments on this submission at this point in time?
Yes, if I may.
Okay, Councilor Barbini.
Thank you. I just wanted to come back to the discussion around point number 6 to make sure that there's clarity around this and the charter. To be clear, the sanctions that were imposed on Trustee Stone on February the 6th are a limit on her right, her freedom of expression. And what the court has said is, in determining whether or not that's reasonable, the board should be balancing those limits on her freedom of expression against the statutory objectives of the act, which I read out the court had summarized. So I think there might have been some confusion around that point. The sanctions do limit her freedom of speech by sanctioning what she said in various forms. And then what you are required to do as decision makers is balance that limit against the statutory objectives in the Education Act. Well, I'm happy to answer more questions if there are any arising out of my comments.
Any other questions? Trustee Miller.
I would just like to follow up on Council's comment right now on the balance of the freedom of speech. In our previous report, it was noted that under some of the tweets, it was identified that Trustee Stone is representing the board. So I would like kind of an example of how, in terms of freedom of speech and, how that would look in terms of representing the board. I'm just wondering, because of course, each person may have the right to speak in the way, or maybe express views that maybe each member may not agree with, but in terms of it being represented by, as a whole, or represented from the board, I'm just not clear with that. If you can help answer that, thank you.
Councilor Barberini?
Yes. So I think it's difficult to provide an example of perhaps a hypothetical, and I apologize, I may not have understood your question, but I think what the court is looking for is for you as decision makers to balance what she has said and her freedom of expression in Canada to make certain comments, balanced against the objectives of the board, which are, again, to promote student well-being and a positive and inclusive school climate. That you also have an obligation as trustees to enforce a minimum standard of conduct expected of trustees, and that all trustees are then required to comply with that code. So it's balancing those objectives which are in the Education Act against her freedom of expression. So I hope that helps, but there is, the court requires you to consider those two and to balance them.
Okay, I see Trustee Miller shaking her head that I think she doesn't have a further question. Any other further questions? Any other further questions? Okay, seeing no other further questions, it's at this point in time where the board has basically would consider or the previous decisions that were made, and either make a decision to either confirm or revoke those breaches at this point in time. You can do it as all 6 together, or if you want to break them out one by one or a group or whatever, it's up to the decision of the board. I'm going to go with the will of the board at this point in time. Trustee Pinello.
Thank you, Chair, and through you, if now is an appropriate time, I'd like to move a motion that, having considered the written submission from the member, the board moves to confirm the determinations of breaches made by the board on February 6th, 2023, and in terms of the sanctions, that we vote to uphold decision from that meeting.
What we'll deal with either the confirm or the revoke of the decisions, and then we will go to sanctions separately, just so to ensure the clean process of that. So we have a motion to basically confirm all 6 sanctions that were presented on the February 6th meeting, sorry.
Chair Edwards, sorry to interrupt. I think you just misspoke there. You said all 6 sanctions.
Sorry, all 6, sorry, you're right, I misspoke there. All 6 resolutions made by the board.
All six
decisions.
Findings of, I guess, breaches or findings of breach, yeah.
Sorry, thank you for the clarification. All 6 findings of the breaches on February 6th. And so I have a motion on the floor. I need a seconder. Trustee Brown. Now I will go into discussions as far as the motion is concerned, and I'm going to start with Student Trustee Ben Cameron.
Thank you, Chair. I would just like to ask for a recorded vote that includes the student trustees. Thank you.
Thank you, Student Trustee Ben Cameron. We will go for a recorded vote when we go to a vote. Okay, so any other comments on the motion? My speaker list disappeared. Any comments on the motion? Seeing none, we will go forward with a recorded vote, both a binding and a non-binding vote, basically starting with alphabetical order with the chair's vote last before the non-binding vote is taken. Thank you.
Through you, Chair, I will now call the recorded vote. I will begin with Trustee Arsenault.
Thank you. Confirm.
Trustee Brown.
In favor.
Trustee Cunningham.
In favor.
Trustee Linton.
In favor.
Trustee Miller.
In favor.
Trustee Morton.
In favor.
Trustee Oldfield.
In favor.
Trustee Panelo.
In favor.
Trustee Thatcher.
In favor.
Trustee Edwards.
In favor.
And I'll now go to the non-binding vote for the student trustees. Student trustee Cameron.
In favor.
Student trustee Edwards.
In favor.
Student trustee Hewitt.
In favor.
We have 10 trustees in favor and 3 student trustees in favor.
That motion is carried. Thank you. Now we move on to sanctions. At this point in time, we must look at the sanctions, and we either can confirm, vary, or revoke those sanctions. Again, there were 3 sanctions that were provided at that point in time, and it's, I will move to Trustee Oldfield to begin the discussion.
Thank you. Through you, Chair, I move that the board confirm its decision of February 6, 2023, wherein the board determined to impose the following sanctions. Do you want me to read the sanctions? Okay. That Trustee Stone be barred from all of the next board meeting, which of course has taken place already. That Trustee Stone be barred from sitting on any and all committees of the board until December 31st, 2023, and that Trustee Stone be censured.
Okay, I have a motion. I need a seconder, please. Trustee Cunningham. Discussion on the motion, please. I have I'm just looking to see for hands, but I have Trustee Cunningham.
I'd just like to ask for a recorded vote again.
Okay, thank you. There'll be a recorded vote on that. All right. Any other questions, comments on the motion on the floor? Seeing none, we will call for a recorded vote again, starting alphabetically with the chair last, both binding and then non-binding. Thank you.
Through the chair, I'll now call the recorded vote. We'll begin with Trustee Arsenault.
In favor.
Trustee Brown.
In favor.
Trustee Cunningham.
In favor.
Trustee Linton.
In favor.
Trustee Miller.
In favor.
Trustee Morton.
In favor.
Trustee Oldfield.
In favor.
Trustee Panelo.
In favor.
Trustee Thatcher.
In favor.
Trustee Edwards.
In favor.
I'll now call the non-binding vote for the student trustees. Trustee Cameron.
In favor.
Student trustee Edwards.
In favor.
Student trustee Hewitt.
In favor.
We have 10 trustees in favor and 3 student trustees in favor.
Thank you. That motion is carried. We have come to the end of our agenda, so a motion to adjourn. Trustee Panelo, Trustee Arsenault, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.